We will now have a conversation between a diverse group of business and city leaders to advocate for exactly that, a collaborative approach where everyone works together through diplomacy, public-private partnership, citizen engagement, what have we, but work together in order to reach the level of ambition needed to tackle the climate crisis. And to moderate this session, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome up here as moderator Kate Hampton, CEO of the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, and by the way, also a very good friend and supporter of C40 and also of this event. Welcome up here, Kate. And you will be followed by your panelist, Mads Nipper, Group President and CEO of the Grundfos Group, Naoko, Ishii, CEO and Chairperson of the Global Environment Facility, also known as GEF, and Valerie Plante, Mayor of Montreal. Welcome and enjoy the debate.
Well, good morning, or whatever time zone your body feels like it's on. I'm really excited to be here with this panel talking about collaboration between public and private sector. We've heard this morning about the amazing commitments that C40 cities have made to take their fair share of the Paris Agreement. But we also know, because of C40 research, that 80% of the actions that need to be taken are going to involve collaboration with other actors, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And whether it's energy, buildings, waste or transport or any of the other things that we've heard about, there are amazing companies and cities collaborating together. We also know that very few cities are actually able to borrow from the state. Only 1 in 5 C40 cities, and only 1 in 4 can issue municipal bonds. So we're also going to talk about access to finance on this panel. We know that many businesses around the world are already prioritizing climate change along with our cities and can set a great example for national leaders. So we're going to hear from Mayor Plante today, as well as Naoko Ishii from the Global Environment Facility and from Mads Nipper from Grundfos. So I'm going to ask you each a question. We've cooked this up in the green room, so it should be interesting. And then we'll have an opportunity for a bit of a discussion. So, Mayor Plante, I've been learning backstage about the work you've done on transport. Can you give us some examples of collaboration that have made that possible, please?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that I was invited to talk about how do we work all together, because collaboration is key if we want to fight climate change. And I was at the UN 2 weeks ago, and Montreal shared the objective of diminishing our emission by 55% by 2030, which is quite ambitious. And so transportation is a huge place where we need to act on. And I could give you many, many examples of what we've been doing, because time is clicking, of course. But one of the, maybe I give you a very specific example, is that in the downtown Montreal area, so Montreal is 2 million citizens, or downtown core is quite busy, of course, but there's also a lot of people living downtown, which is great. And we were having trouble with everything related to delivering. We know that with the the e-commerce, there's a lot of trucks, delivery trucks. And so we partnered with Pure Rollator to create a hub where those big trucks would actually come downtown in a specific area, and from there, we're charging all the goods and everything they're delivering into electric cargo bikes. And when you think about it, it's just perfect, because for us, the city has some financial resources to come up with ideas like that, but not as much as a company like Pure Rollator. And for them, it's a good deal as well, because they can test few projects. And let's not forget that Montreal is probably one of the coldest city in the world. And I'm telling you, there's actually bikes running. There's people on their bike delivering summer and winter, even when it's minus 20. So it's actually good for the different companies working. And for us, it gives us the opportunity to bring forward ideas that both is good for diminishing emission, but also better for the security of people walking around or cycling around in the downtown area.
Thank you, Plante. I was proud of my London winter cycling, but you just set a new bar in terms of -20. So Mads Nipper, you're really doing great work around the world on water, and my fear around adaptation is that taxpayers are going to be carrying the bill for all of the failure to act over the last decades. Can you talk about how we can get private money as well as public money into adaptation on water?
Yes, but first let me just reiterate what Mark Watts said this morning, that it's really, really important that as incredibly important that the climate mitigation is, so the emissions under control, we are also seeing very tangible examples that the climate adaptation, which are largely water related, so droughts, flooding, pollution, essentially the negative consequences of climate change really often come into water challenges, and that is why we're leaning into this partnership with C40 to try and do that better. But it also takes money. I mean, everything we do takes money, but it also takes technology, and it also takes courage to act, as Mayor Hidalgo also said this morning. Technologies are largely there. There's a lot that companies like ours can do to accelerate technology, which is not just inventing, in our case, a new pump, but finding new business models which can make it more accessible for cities, more affordable. But it's really also leveraging digital technologies which can amplify the impact of technology a lot. But on financing, companies like ours, even though we are sort of a decent-sized company with a good balance sheet, we can't finance everything that needs to be done in cities. So we need to think differently. And one of those things, I believe, is that since we are in a low interest, or in some cases even negative interest environment, there's never been a better time to attract institutional capital, to make really long-term investments into infrastructure, into sustainable solutions. And I think we're at the brink of a unique opportunity for civil societies, for institutional investors, and for companies to come together to work to create these innovative financing solutions.
Thanks, and what a great window it is. Let's make sure that we answer the call of our young people and rise to the challenge. Naoko, Ishii, it's lovely to see you again. So Global Environment Facility has been doing increasing work with cities, and you're a grant-making institution. So can you describe the work you do in helping cities integrate, bring stakeholders together and develop plans?
Right, like a typical intergovernmental multilateral public institution, we tended to work more with national government. But for the last few years, we really come to understand that in order for us to fight against the climate crisis, we really need to work with cities more directly. So that about 4 or 5 years ago, that very much inspired by you mayors, and but also that working closely with C40, Mark Watts, and ICLEI and WRI, we, the GF, have created global platform for sustainable cities. And the purpose of this is basically to let us work much closer with cities, and also not to do very small projects in a fragmented way here and there. We really would like to work with city leaders to help them do much better integrated, sustainable planning, so that you could actually do the project here and there. So that was the idea. So this program has actually several the elements in it. The first one is really to help that planning, and but also that to create the spaces for cities to interchange your best practice, knowledge, and the good ones were actually the failure, so that they don't necessarily have to repeat the same mistake. And then it also creates a kind of technical assistance pot of money, because as you already mentioned, access to finance is one of the most important things. So this also helps the cities to actually enhance their credit worthiness, so that they can go to the capital market. So that is actually an idea. We also try to help that project pipeline, that create much bankable project pipeline by helping the project preparation facility and together. But the most important thing which I have seen is that it has already created a very interesting example that the cities are actually learning from each other, and to do, for instance, a transit-oriented policy in China, out of our few cities, and also that innovation observatory in Brazil, how to use geospatial data in their planning, not only that a small number of cities, entire Brazilian cities. And another good example is PPP project, private-public financing that you mentioned the transport, but another big thing is actually the building. But in order for you to do energy efficiency building, you really need to bring every stakeholder together at one place to create a bankable project. So we actually made a platform to bring cities as a regulator, but also planner. We bring that finance, and we bring business as a provider for technology and new ideas, and we kind of create as a convener, create this space so that you can do PPP much more easily. So it's just one example how that an institution like us want to do much more business with you cities and bring every stakeholder together for the bankable projects.
Thanks, Naoko. So in the time we have left, because you're all super collaborators, I'm wondering if you can share one recommendation for people who are sitting in your position, so Mayor Plante for other mayors, Mads for you, people in the business sector, and Naoko, I'm going to ask you to expand your remit to the whole finance sector, because we don't have a financier on the panel. If you could share one recommendation for your sector, but also one ask of other sectors about how they can collaborate better with you. So one recommendation for your gang and an ask for the others.
It's a difficult one, especially for cities, I would say, because we need to, when we come up with projects and it's time to finance those projects, there are rules, right? There's bylaws and for really good reasons. So the question is, how do we bring innovation? How do we bring flexibility within our processes and the ways we're working? And so I do find that for me, the biggest challenge right now as for the City of Montreal is to come out of the model of the call for, we call it the call for tenders, that is really strict, and it's really hard for small, innovative companies that might have resources but also ideas to come in the processes where it's quite strict. So it is more a call right now, I'd say, for the other level of governments that can help city to get some flexibility. We need some air so we can work with different partners, again, financially, but also with great innovative ideas.
Thank you. That's really specific and helpful. Thank you. Mads Nipper.
Yes, and I'm sorry if I'm slightly less specific, but I think I'm hoping it's important nonetheless. But I think the most important thing, both business leaders, but likewise also the public sector and investors can do, is to really rethink the social contract with each other, including citizens. We are at a time where if business leaders think about shareholder value, and if public sectors think about businesses as greedy people who want to sell products, then and if the citizens start to distrust both companies and politicians, which we have seen in many parts of the world, we will drift further apart rather than the opposite. So I think we, as business leaders and the public sector, we need to fundamentally rethink the social contract with each other and, most importantly, with citizens. And that means to completely redefine what does value creation mean. And that is a plea to especially business leaders, because if we don't do that, our ability to both be business actors in 10 years, but also our ability to fundamentally contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, and not least on water and climate, we will be out of that game. And that will be a disaster both for business, but also for society, because it needs business.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a message that needs to be heard loud and clear. You can hear from the applause.
And if I may then, because one additional plea, I know I already gave one plea to the other actors, but if I may shoehorn in one additional, then rethinking the value of water is really important. Because in order to attract capital, in order to attract business, in order to really fuel innovation, if water is a resource that is taken for granted, fighting that those climate consequences of really being climate adaptive will be impossible to do. So rethinking value of water would be really important for everybody who can influence that.
Thank you. Very helpful. Naoko, Ishii, your recommendations and asks.
It's just build on the mayors and business, and particularly this importance of social contract. We, the GF, really carry the importance of how to protect the global commons. Global environment is global commons, and in the past, we really didn't see that the whole picture, because now it's time for us to change to how to protect that, to protect the global commons. So the social contract concept is absolutely important. And our job is really to create that space so that each one of us can actually play its role to do our social contract. In my view, that then, even for the last 2 days being here, I'm so excited to hear that the mayors, the city places come together to take the new challenges. It's not just a climate mitigation challenge, but the adaptation is now rising, resilience issue is rising. That I am so excited to hear about the circular economy concept is really embedded into each of the conversation. So the city can really take on this newly emerging movement and a transformation. So I really want to continue to work with all of you to make sure that those emerging challenges is kind of that the city is able to also address those challenges. So that's one. But in terms of financing, access to finance, we all know the financial sector is one of the most conservative sector. It's not really easy to really change them dramatically, but there are things I think we can do together. I continue to believe the value of good program or good plan and good program, that will enhance your chance to access to the finance. So I think it's absolutely important for us to do everything possible to continue to help the cities to do sustainable integrated planning and continue to do that and how to enhance that and access to the finance. There are a lot of opportunity to train that city officials that in terms of that how to assess your creditworthiness, how to increase your revenue stream, and how to make the project preparation for the bankable project. I think it's really time for us to come together because cities and we cannot afford to stand still. We really have to come together to fight against this climate emergency.
Thank you, Mayor Plante. Yeah, absolutely. Round of applause, Naoko.
Totally,
Agree
yes.
with that. Mayor Plante, would you like to finish us off?
Well, just because I really like the idea of the social contract that you were speaking about. And I think that as elected officials, often in our the decisions we're making in our cities, there's also often this contradiction between economic development and sustainable development. And I'm kind of doing a call right now asking like all the business sector in general, I need your voice. We need your voice to talk strong about how can those two work together. Because when I hear about a solution like yours and what the voice you're bringing as well, I just wish we would be more solidarity and to bring this voice very strong, because it's going to help us also to make the bold decision that are going to make a huge difference if we're all here together. So I kind of wanted to add that little note. Let's work together.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and I think inclusion and collaboration is a really strong theme for this summit, and certainly with some of the young people that I met yesterday, their plea was for greater inclusion for them in decision making. So I think we should add young people to the list of stakeholders that need to be involved in these partnerships for public purpose. Down the road, about a kilometer away, there's a cities and business forum where about 500 businesses are gathering to talk about collaboration with cities. So we need to make sure that we're finding the good in all of our sectors and collaborating as much as possible. It's the only way we're going to get there. And it's great to hear some super collaborators who are really exemplary. So thank you ever so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.